Menendez Brothers breaking news part 2. Hey, we're going to update you and share with you how the smoking gun in that case could have turned into the demolition of that case. We're going to share that and a whole lot more in this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Yep, it's what some people are calling, well, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. Charlie Crimebuster, charliecrimebuster.com, and peacemakernetwork.com are copyrights owned by Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. So glad to have you a part of the Charlie Crime Train today. Hey, we're at episode number 2 of the Menendez Brothers breaking news. And we're going to get you all caught up on that in just a moment. Right now, let's get some housekeeping taken care of. We'd like to always remind you that you're welcome to reach out with a shout out. In fact, we'd love to hear from you. In fact, I just was looking at some of our emails and an old friend from the past happened to email. It's always good to hear from old friends and new friends. You can reach out with a shout out. You can reach me, Charlie Crimebuster, at gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. Hey, also, if you like to support the program, go on over there to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. There you can become a badge, BADGE supporter. Yep. For just a few pennies a day, you can help the podcast. But you know what's even better than that? You can help us help those brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger. Yes, I'm talking about law enforcement, talking about first responders, and, of course, the brave men and women of the military. Read all about that, peacemakernetwork.com. And if you'd like to get caught up on the episodes, we have a ton of them out there for your listening enjoyment. Just jump over to charliecrimebuster.com. There you'll find a whole bunch of series, true crime series. If you're a crime junkie, if you're a true crime junkie, if you love true crime, then I think you'll find a whole lot of things there that you will enjoy listening to. Lots of episodes, lots of series. Lots of times we follow those things right as they are breaking. Give you right up-to-date stuff. Go right on over there to charliecrimebuster.com. All right, last week now we shared with you how the district attorney in L.A., well, he announced that he was going to recommend to the court. I called it surprising news, and it was certainly breaking news. How he was going to recommend to the court that the Menendez brothers should be resentenced. Yep. And how that resentencing could actually mean they could be released from prison on parole. That's right. Well, lots of controversy about this for sure. And we would love to hear what you think about it. Again, reach out with a shout out. charliecrimebuster.com. What do you think? So let's go back to where it all started. On that August the 20th, 1989 evening, there Jose and Kitty Menendez were watching television in the den of their Beverly Hills mansion. It was a James Bond type movie, The Spy I Loved. And that was when Lyle and Eric entered the den carrying loaded shotguns. Jose shot 6 times. Now get this, 6 times. Up close and personal with a shotgun. That included a fatal shot to the back of his head. Kitty, their mother, shot 10 times. That was even before the fatal shot to her cheek. Actually, she was on the ground crawling away. Then Lyle ran to the car. Eric handed him ammo to reload before firing that fatal shot to her face. Terrible, violent killings. Savagely killed. Now, immediately after the killings of both brothers, they kind of remained around for a few minutes. They thought that the police would respond due to the noise of the gunshots. But when they found they did not respond, They then took off to get rid of the clothes. You can imagine the clothes would be covered with blood, can't you? You've something that close and personal. And they buried their shotguns somewhere around Mahalla Drive, there near their house. Then they went to a movie theater, going to purchase tickets for the film Batman. Wanted to use that as an alibi. Yep, I had to abandon that one. Little time stamp on the ticket stuff kind of kept that from happening, right? Then they went to a place called the Taste of L.A. That was a festival there in Santa Monica. Let's see, it was at the Civic Auditorium. That's right, the Civic Auditorium where that took place. So then they came back to home. Again, no police presence. So Lyle called 911. Emotionally told the operator, someone killed my parents, saying that they had just come home and discovered the bodies. Now, I've listened to that call. Maybe you have too. If you were to listen to it, you could hear Eric in the background screaming out and crying. So the brothers then were taken to the police department, and then they gave their statement. One of them suggested to the police that this may have been a mafia hit. See, their father was an executive of RCA. That was a division that did adult films, and it was known at that time that the mob had a part ownership in those types of films. Now, keep in mind, folks, these brothers were definitely showing emotion. This wasn't something where somebody could say, well, they showed no emotion at all. No, they were very emotional. And I think for the most part, well, the investigators back then, well, they thought they were very believable. Most of these investigators really thought that they had indeed come home to find that their parents had been savagely murdered. That's right. Now, there were all kinds of speculations, all kinds of theories floating around. One was that it could have been an occult killing. Yep, remember now, this was not too many years after Charles Manson murders. That was no doubt in the minds of a lot of people in that area. So there were a whole lot of areas for investigators to investigate. And there was a whole lot to go on as far as talking to people. But there were no fingerprints of anyone else. No forced entry. But lots and lots of theories. You see, it appeared to investigators right off the bat that, well, Jose Menendez, he was not a very nice person. Had a whole bunch of people that weren't too pleased with him. You might call them enemies. In fact, hardly no one that worked with him liked him. He was considered a bully. He had told someone that he'd rather be feared than to be liked. So the investigators, they took time to investigate these areas of investigation. And almost the case was close to going cold. But in the meantime, while interviewing those of the family and those who knew the parents, well, investigators, now they were already keeping the brothers in mind, as you can imagine. But one thing that drew them out was the lavish spending that the brothers were doing. So, then the people were talking, and the police were listening to people who knew the brothers. You always talk to people who know people to get to know people, right? One of the friends told the police that one of the brothers had told him that they had killed their parents. Now, keep in mind, it's hard to know who believe in all this because they were always those people who like to be in the limelight, right? Who say anything to get attention. However, their attempt to get the brother to spill his guts to a wired-up friend, nope, didn't work. Now, these guys for sure talked to others, and they showed behavior that caused a lot of attention to them. That, combined with the spending like money would never run out, would have brought a lot of focus from the police. And there was one thing particular. It is that one thing that I call the smoking gun that blew this case wide open. And I'm going to share with you about that smoking gun and how that smoking gun could have exploded in the prosecutor's face in just a moment. I want to tell you all about that. But right now, it's time for us to lighten the load a little bit and share with you what we call our crazy crook story of the week. Now, Charlie Crimebuster, your old friend here, we live in the Sunshine State. And in the Sunshine State, we are known for our orange juice. Well, our crazy crook story today includes someone who apparently loved orange juice a little too much. In fact, I imagine O.J. Simpson, he might even be disturbed in his grave. It wasn't that long ago he died at the age of 76 from prostate cancer. But O.J. was known as the Juice. Well, maybe. Our crazy crook today is certainly known to Charlie Crimebuster as the Orange Juice Bandit. He was a thief in Portland, Oregon, and he had executed the perfect robbery a couple years ago, or almost perfect. You see, after going through every inch of the house he had broken into, opening all the drawers, stealing everything of value he could find, without leaving any fingerprints behind, thought he had it down, wore the gloves, very careful about what he touched. But then he got thirsty. Grabbed a container of orange juice he found in the refrigerator. Took a gulp directly from it. Naughty guy. Didn't think very much. He left that container in the sink. And the container, of course, was sent straight to DNA testing unit at the Oregon State Crime Lab. And there, the forensic guys, those forensic scientists, well, they found a DNA match. And that, my friend, was how the Orange Juice Bandit got caught. So, my friend, this idiot who thought after he purged this residence, this house, did not leave any fingerprints behind, but thought he was thirsty and got a gulp of orange juice left in the refrigerator, and then left that container out in the sink in plain view, my friend, he is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook of the week. Now back to our main focus. We're going to talk about the arrest, the trial of the Menendez Brothers, and bring you full circle to where we are today. I told you these guys talked a little too much. Well, Eric, he decided that he was going to confess his crime. Too much for him to bear, apparently. So he confessed to his psychologist, Dr. Jerome Ozell. Only problem is, even these psychologists who are supposed to keep everything to themselves, well, he in turn told his mistress. He had a mistress, Judalyn Smith. And then Ozell actually began to recording his sessions with Lyle and Eric. But, as often happens in these extramarital affairs, well, after breaking up with Ozell, a scorned woman and all that kind of stuff, Will Smith then told the police about the brothers' involvement in the murders. And after she shared that and shared that they were recordings, well, Lyle, he was arrested on March the 8th. Eric turned himself in 3 days later after he came back from Israel. It was at a tennis tournament out there. And both of them were held without bail, jailed separately there at the Los Angeles County Jail. Now, after they were told by Miss Smith that the boys had confessed to the crime on tape, well, then the police raided Ozell's home, Dr. Ozell's home. They were going to try to find those tapes. He kept telling them that whatever happened between him and the Menendez brothers was all confidential, and it was protected by doctor-client, privileges. But they insisted, and then they were led to a safety deposit box. I think it was at a bank, where those tapes were actually stashed along with the doctor's notes. And then they demanded Dr. Ozell to play the tapes for them. Now, listen carefully, friend. This was the smoking gun, but this smoking gun could have, it could have blown up in their face. You see, during that whole time, Dr. Ozell was telling the detectives that information was confidential and protected information. But the police insisted, went out on their way to say, play us those tapes. But hey, hang in here with me now. Listen, they did play the tapes. But if the judge, think with me, had ruled that these tapes and their contents were protected, well then, my friend, that whole case against the brothers could have been tanked. In other words, my friend, anything that came from those tapes, the place where the brothers went to buy the shotguns, the place where they got rid of their blood-stained clothes, the place where they buried their shotguns, all of that information could have been considered. Well, the legal term is fruit from the poison tree. And that means that anything found from that point on as a result of these tapes could have been disqualified as being used as evidence. In fact, you're going to come to find out that these very tapes was held from the jury for a while. You see, and all of that could have tanked the investigation. Now, what they should have done, in my humble opinion, is they could have already collected that evidence. They could have put it in some kind of locked box, not listening to them. They could have kept them under lock and key, protected the chain of custody until the courts ruled whether they could examine them. But no, they went on anyway. All of this could have been lost, all because of that rush. Now, fortunately for the prosecution, in August of 1990, the judge there, James Albert, he ruled that the tapes of the conversation between Eric and a psychologist, Dr. Ozell, he ruled they were admissible. But now listen, this is why he ruled they were admissible. He said they could be ruled as admissible since Ozell claimed that Lyle had threatened him. You see, when Lyle threatened the doctor, that if the doctor told anybody he would kill him or kill his family, kill those people who he loved, which is allegedly they said, then at that point, that violated the doctor-patient privilege, and that these tapes could indeed be heard. But now, wait a minute. Maybe I should say, not wait a minute, but listen to me. Wait 2 years. Yep. Because Albert's ruling, it was appealed. Yep, it was appealed. After which the proceedings, well, it was delayed for 2 whole years. That's right, 2 whole years. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court of California. And then the Supreme Court of California ruled in August 1992, 2 years later, that most of the tapes were admissible, with the exception now, and listen to this, pay close attention to this because this is important, with the exception of the tape in which Eric actually discussed the murders. That one could not be allowed at that time. Well, of course, after that decision, the grand jury issued indictments charging brothers of murders of their parents and special circumstances. Yep, special circumstances that the killings were committed for financial gain. You see, they were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances for lying in wait, and that made them even eligible for the death penalty. Hey, think with me a moment. If that jury had given them the death penalty, would we be talking about this case today, or would it already be over? Well, it was California. It wouldn't be over, right? All right, next I want to share with you a little bit about this case. Before I do that, though, I want to take a moment and encourage you to join us on our YouTube channel. Yep, our YouTube channel, where every week in the middle of the week, James Buckland, our producer, and I, we talk about the episode that we just dropped. We will be talking about this particular episode in the middle of the week. And during those times, in the middle of the week, we do bring fresh perspective to the episode. We even introduce new information that could have been left out of the podcast. We're going to be discussing these facts and this information with each other and you on our next YouTube production, which will go out in the middle of this week. If you want to go there, just go to YouTube, tag it Charlie Crimebuster, Charlie Crimebuster, one word, and you'll find us there. Or better yet, just go to our show notes and click on it. They'll be there for you. All right, back to the court. The brothers, they were represented by lead defense lawyer Leslie Aberson. She was a really top-notch defense attorney. You did not want to go against her if you were a prosecutor. That was Eric's attorney. Gio Lansing for Lyle, and both of these attorneys worked together, cooperated together in producing a strong defense. Now, listen to how it goes. The brothers now are saying that they killed their parents out of fear of their lives. You see, that was important because California law, well, the brothers could only be acquitted for manslaughter if they could prove they were in immediate and imminent danger. You see, the prosecution, they argued there was no evidence of imminent danger or self-defense. The prosecutor Bonsack, she argued that this was contradicted by the brothers purchasing these shotguns in advance. Remember last week I told you they got these shotguns in another area way in advance, hiding their actions. Prosecutors also used those tape conversation, the conversation between the brothers and their psychologist, in which the brothers said they had planned those murders beforehand. They argued that their murders were inconsistent with a self-defense killing. And they said the brothers had even shot their mother, Kitty, who was moaning and trying to crawl away. He even went to reload his shotgun, returned to finish her off. All great information to offset that this was a self-defense killing. And as far as those sexual abuse allegations that the defense was talking about, well, the prosecution said they were fabricated. In fact, they said that nobody mentioned abuse until 7 months after the murders. That was when the legal defense was being formulated. They even went and told the jurors that the mention of sexual abuse was absent of the discussion and tapes of their psychologist, Jerome Moselle, and that Eric did not mention the abuse in his earlier confession to his friend Greg. So all of a sudden now, they're bringing it to the trial some 6 or 7 months after the murders. They told the prosecution said to the jurors all throughout the trial that Lyle and Eric were quite capable, and I believe they didn't have any problem proving this to the jury, that they were quite capable of lying frequently and in great detail to avoid being caught. And so it's easy to think they were also capable of lying about child abuse, sex abuse, to avoid the death sentence. Then prosecutor played Lyle's stage 911 call for the jurors. She played that to show them how good of an actor that Lyle was. Remember on that phone call when he was so disturbed and all those hysterics? And it did not help that before the trial, Lyle had offered his ex-girlfriend, Jamie, money if she would lie for him in the trial and claim that Jose Menendez had made sexual advances toward her. So he wanted her to lie in the trial and say that his father made sexual advances toward his girlfriend. Well, that didn't go over real good with the jury or anybody else. But before Lyle was cross-examined by the prosecution, the defense said, we better get him on the stand. We better talk about that lie beforehand. So it's pretty easy to see, don't you think, how easy it would that some people would not follow the sex abuse claims back there with all their deceptions? So then the defense, they bring on experts to show that the behavior of the brothers, these lies, and all of this is actually being consistent with people who have been abused. But wait a minute. In hindsight, this might have been a mistake. Because they made so much of this, that this was the reason they were behaving this way, it then turned the tide. And now, because of them bringing these experts on to saying that this behavior was in accordance of this kind of being abused sexually, well, the judge then allowed that confession tape to be played. Now, before that confession tape was not allowed in the jury. Jury did not even know about the confession tape. But because the defense went down this line, then the judge said, well, you have the right to disprove it by saying that they didn't say anything about abuse at that time, but they claimed it because of something else. So the prosecution then was able to use the tapes to disprove the abuse claims. Brothers made no mention about sexual abuse, but they did complain a lot about their father and their suicidal mother. In fact, get this, Lyle had said in that trial that by killing their mother, they were doing her, he and Eric, were doing her a favor. Yep, putting her out of her misery. And that they had shown, get this, great courage by killing their mother. That's according to not only the tapes, but Dr. Ozell's account. They didn't kill their parents for money, but rather out of hatred and a desire to be free from their father's dominations and how he talked down to them and impossible standards. That's what Ozell said that Lyle had confided. That he, in fact, Lyle had said, now get this, his father would have been proud of him for killing him and pulling off the tasks. Well, that's a lot different than people being traumatized by sexual abuse, don't you think? Now, the tape also shared how one of the brothers said that sometimes, and this was really damning information, that tape also showed that one of the brothers, he said he missed his parents. He said, yep, just like one would miss a dog that they had. Did you get that? Compared his parents to a dog, a pet dog. Well, back to the focus of the attorneys. Well, the defense said it should be involuntary manslaughter, that the brothers acted in self-defense. The prosecutor said, nope, brothers could not be honest. Tons of lies clouded the fact that if they even were molested, it clouded the fact of their lies. So, all this now goes to the jury. What do you think the jury said? What do you think the jury came up with? Well, it's really interesting to see that both juries, remember, they were actually tried in court at the same time, but there were two different juries, one jury for each brother. But what is so interesting is that both juries went this way. The women, it was a gender division. The women on the jury, for the most part, in both juries, led toward involuntary manslaughter. The males, they wanted guilty of first-degree murder. And so the juries are deliberating. Women are saying, we think it should be involuntary manslaughter. The men are saying, no, it's much more than this. This was calculated cold murder. And they could not come to a decision. Both juries could not come to a conclusion. And so judge had no other way to go than to pronounce a mistrial. But this was a mistrial, he did not dismiss it. The judge did not dismiss this with prejudice. In other words, they could be retried again, and almost immediately when the mistrial was announced, the DA comes back and says the brothers will be retried. So now we know, my friend, that there's new evidence that was not used during that first trial, or the second trial. That new evidence is that the brothers had been abused, or so allegedly abused, because a new person, a guy from a boy band, came forward saying that the boy's father, that Jose, raped him when he was only 14 years of age. And then another relative came up with a letter with one of the brothers writing about that sexual abuse even prior to the murders. And that new evidence, along with the fact, according to the LADA, that we live in a different time, that people are more sensitive now to people being abused sexually, even males being abused sexually. Almost unheard of for people to believe that back in the time of this trial, but now we've evolved as a society, and there's a lot more empathy and some sympathy toward people who have been sexually abused. And because society has moved more in that direction, and because of this new evidence, the LADA thinks that there should be a resentencing of the brothers. So I guess what I'm saying is, what say ye? What say ye? Interesting. The jury in those first trials they were very, very divided. The women said, hey, it should be involuntary manslaughter. The men said, hey, it should be guilty. Wonder if it's that way today. Wonder how it goes today. How do you feel about it? Reach out with a shout out. charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Well, time's already gone. I guess we try to teach each time of these episodes, and the teaching today is that you need to be careful. Need to be careful that you don't just all of a sudden think that the only way you can get out of something is to kill someone. That's not the way to make it happen, even if you have well reason to do so. The only reason you should really kill somebody, take another person's life, is if your life is in danger or someone else's life is in danger. And I can tell you for a fact that I believe these guys were not in immediate danger. Now, they changed the whole story around. They changed that whole story around. They said that when they went there that night, that the father had got up and shut the door, the den door. He never did that. They thought that he was going to kill them right there and then, and they went out and got their shotguns and came back in. Now, that's what they said during the trial. They did not say that, though, with their confession on the tape. Remember that. Something to keep in mind. Well, here you go. There was a smoking gun, those tapes. It almost blew up in their face because if the judge had ruled that the confidentiality of doctor-patient confidentiality was kept, then that whole bunch of evidence could have been excluded. But the judge and other people ruled that he could allow it in. And so that's where we are today. All right, next week we're going to talk a little more about the next trial. And we're going to talk a whole lot next time about this new thing that the DA has come up with. This breaking news that he's going to recommend to the judge that they be resentenced. I'm going to tell you how I feel about it. And I'd like to hear how you feel about it. charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. Till this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.